back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Anna. Thanks for clicking and stopping by. I make YouTube videos about various things, including my life, previously about my experience in college at WVU, but since I filmed a last video, I've graduated. Anyway, thank you for coming back and clicking on this video. If you are a previous subscriber or watched a lot of my college YouTube videos, as I know most of you did, if you have any requests about college or post-college life, please let me know. That's pretty much what this channel is going to be about now, which is kind of the possibilities of what you can do after you graduate. Today, I'm going to be talking about how I prepped and packed for a 6-week backpacking trip through Europe that I'm about to go on today. I'm gonna just walk you through what we did and specifically where we're going and our whole itinerary and how I worked all that shit out and just how to plan such a big trip. And kind of just try to give you some advice on how to do the same thing if you want to do the same thing. If you've seen some of my last videos, you know that I went on a backpacking trip 4 years ago to Europe. I have a whole playlist of those videos if you want to go watch them. But yeah, now we're going back for a full 6-week backpacking trip, and by we, I mean me and my partner. Last time I did it all solo because nobody was cool enough to go with me, so I decided to go by myself. So let's just jump right into it. Step 1 is deciding where you want to go. This can be one of the most difficult parts of the decision-making process. There's a couple things you have to think about when you're thinking about destinations and building out your itinerary. First, I thought about places that I've been to before and loved. So for me, again, if you go back and watch my old videos, you know that's places like Bratislava, Slovakia, Prague in Czechia. For me, those were the places I really wanted to go. And then I asked my partner Jordan what places he wanted to go to. He actually did a trip with one of his friends that same summer, even though we didn't know each other back then. He really enjoyed this little town in France that we're gonna go to. He's been to a few places in Italy and Barcelona. I've also been to Barcelona. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite city in the world, so we definitely decided we had to go back there, especially because last time my partner didn't actually explore the city at all. He kind of just sat in his hotel, so we will be doing some sightseeing this time. Just being honest. So once Jordan and I talked about the places that we both individually wanted to go, we took a look at new places and activities that we might want to explore that we haven't been to before. One of these places was one of Jordan's top countries that he wanted to go to anyway, which is Croatia. They have beautiful beaches and water. We actually found a 7-day cruise that you can take with like 8 to 10 other people, kind of charter a boat together. So we put that on our list. We also thought that going to a music festival would be great. Again, if you have been around my channel for a while, you know that I really like this band called the 1975, and they're doing a whole summer tour in Europe, so that was one of my priorities, to make a stop at one of the festivals that they're performing at. So we compiled this list of places that we wanted to go that we haven't been to before, repeats, and possible activities that would be fun to kind of stop along the way. In this first step, I kind of disregard location, which is definitely a big flaw of mine. Be a little bit mindful, but step 2 is really where you're gonna have to be focused on the locations, which leads me to step 2, which is decide when you want to go. So first you have to recognize the non-flexible dates. Say you have an activity or some kind of time restraint based on that. So for example, for our cruise in Croatia, there are certain dates that you can do it. So we had to pick one of the week-long cruises and incorporate those dates as firm dates into our itinerary before we planned anything else, and then had to kind of plan around those activities. So the 2 that we chose were the Croatian cruise and Mad Cool Festival in Madrid. Then once you recognize the kind of non-flexible dates in your itinerary, then you can go ahead and kind of see what geographically makes sense with the other places and activities on your list. So if you don't have any time constraints like we did, you can definitely just kind of plan out your cities on a map and visualize what kind of route would make sense based on where things are. I would recommend starting to Google the distances of travel between different places. I think as Americans, we tend to think Europe is pretty small because it is in relativity to America, but it is also still big. For example, went through a couple rounds of itineraries to see what made the most sense. In the first one, we got to England because that's usually the cheapest place to fly in. And then we wanted to go to Prague. And Prague is in Central Europe, which doesn't seem super far in my brain at least, but when we planned it out, it was like a good 2-day overnight train trip. Because we're taking mostly trains, which I'll get to in a second, that was not going to be the most practical solution for us. After you decide when you want to go, and this is kind of built into the previous step, but you have to figure out what method of travel you're going to use. I'm going to kind of try to keep this brief, but there are basically 3 methods that you can use to travel around Europe, and that's bus, train, or plane. For us, we're taking the train almost the whole time. The only time that we're taking a couple flights is when we have one of those locations that's just a bit too far that it didn't fit in our itinerary to make the whole train ride. The cheapest option is going to be buses most of the time. I recommend buses when you have a shorter route or if you're on a tighter budget. Pros are it's cheap, it's convenient, especially if you're going a pretty short distance, say maybe 4 hours, which is kind of the distance in a lot of Central European hotspots. The cons are it can be uncomfortable. It's usually more uncomfortable than a train. You can get car sick. The second option is trains. This is a very viable option, especially because there are a lot of Eurail passes that allow you to travel kind of on whatever train in whatever country you're in with just a few restrictions or seat reservations that you have to make. This is the method that we're going with primarily. We bought a first class Eurail pass. I had to switch places because I thought it would be nice and smoky and the sun wouldn't come out today because of all the wildfires, but the sun decided to come out, which is wonderful. So trains are a really popular way to travel around Europe. Train lines are really convenient. It's not at all like trains in the US. It actually is a very functioning system that locals use daily. And it's also really scenic. Plus you're not gonna get car sick. So there are a good amount of pros, especially if you have a little bit more money because trains will be a little bit more expensive, especially if you're not getting a Eurail pass. The last method of travel is plane. This is the one that I took most of the time when I went to Europe 3 or 4 years ago. It's convenient if you're going to very far apart locations. So pros, it's fast. It can be really cheap. It can actually be cheaper than train tickets. I would definitely recommend using Skyscanner if you're looking for cheap plane tickets because you can find them super cheap, and I'm talking like 20 bucks. A con though is that it's bad for the environment. It can be expensive. And it can be inconvenient because this is the most high security way to travel. A lot of airports are actually far outside of the city. So I would be very careful when booking flights. If it says that it flies you into Paris, for example, there are 2 Paris airports. One's closer to Paris and one's like 2 hours away, but they will still send you there and call it Paris. It does eat up a lot of time because you have to get there and the journey is usually much longer than getting to like a train station or a bus station. Security takes for fucking ever, as we all know, and then you have to sit and wait around, and it's just a hassle in my opinion. But the nice thing is that there are different options for different budgets. If you have a little bit more to spend, maybe you invest in the train a little bit more. If you don't, maybe you take some overnight buses, maybe you take some flights. Another pro about trains and buses in particular is that if you do take an overnight train or bus, you do save that money on accommodation, which can be really convenient if you do have a longer trip. Instead of waking up at a hostel that you paid for and then paying for an all-day journey where you're not doing anything but sitting on your ass and then getting to another hostel that you have to pay for, that's just like a lot of money. Whereas you could get it from a hostel that you paid for, have a day, go to sleep on a train, wake up, have a day, and then go to a hostel that you paid for. So it's just a little bit more convenient IMO. Okay, so step 3/4 is decide where you want to stay. After you've decided your location, your activities, when-ish you want to go, now you gotta find a place to rest your head at night. So there's 3 general options, either a hotel, a hostel, or an Airbnb. If you're on a little bit more of a budget, and if you're solo traveling especially, I would look into couch surfers. I made some pretty good friends on that last time I went to Europe. I didn't actually sleep on anybody's couch, but I made a good friend out of it, which was nice. It was a nice way to connect with locals for sure. I would be careful, especially if you're a woman, but just in general, like I personally would never ever stay with a man on couch surfers. I would probably stick to hotels, hostels, or Airbnbs, especially if you're staying with someone else, because you can split the cost of, say, an Airbnb, and it can be as much or even less than a hostel. So this is also just completely depending on budget. If you're staying in a hostel, that's usually going to be the cheapest option, although hostels can be expensive in more expensive cities, so just be aware it can be even up to 50 to 60 bucks for a bed, but it can be really cheap, especially if you do a work exchange program. Most hostels you can pretty much walk in or email them a couple weeks in advance and say, hey, I want to stay here, I don't want to pay, and I want to work instead. Most hostels you can work out a situation where you don't get paid, but you stay for free and you help clean or lead the guests out at night for party nights or, something like that. So it can be cheap if you make prior arrangements and are thrifty about it. It can also be really expensive if you decide to do all hotels. We prefer hostels and are staying in hostels most of the time. I will say I'm staying in a few more Airbnbs this time than last, and that's just because I have a partner to split them with. Another tip I have is to look at if breakfast is included or dinner. A few of the places that we're staying have breakfast included, which is nice because it's just one less thing for us to worry about when we're there, and it's just kind of a free built-in meal, which is nice. A lot of hostels also have dinner included, so I would just read the bios of all the hostels that you're looking into, and they'll probably say, I know that at the One Fam hostels, dinner is always free. Some places they have it for a small donation or maybe €5, but those are just really great options because it's just one meal covered for the day that is loads less expensive than anything you would have gotten anywhere in the city. So now I'm gonna just take you through our itinerary so you can kind of see what we ended up with after going through this whole process. I moved some things around and experimented a little bit, and then this second version is what we ended up with. Here we are today. It is June 9th. We leave for the airport in just a few small hours. We ended up getting a flight from DC to JFK. We have a layover in JFK, and then we fly out from there to London Heathrow. You can fly into different places in Europe, but London is usually the cheapest if you're coming from the States, and we get in around 6 a.m. to London. We've done a lot of preparation with trying to fix our sleep schedules, all in hopes that we will be able to get there and immediately have lots of fun. We're meeting up with some friends that live in London. We stay for 3 days, hang out with our friends, and then on the 13th of June, we travel to our next destination, which is France. And we're kind of doing a long extended journey to Italy, which is kind of our first location where we spend quite a few days. We get to Bonn, France. We stay there just for one night. It was a great halfway stop to Italy. On the 14th, we make the journey to Milan. We stay in Milan on the night of the 14th, again, just for one night because it's kind of a stop on the way to our final destination. And then on the 15th, we leave from Milan and get to Florence. So June 15th through 18th, we have 3 nights at a really nice hostel that is about 45 minutes outside of the town in a little castle situation, and they're gonna make us homemade pasta, and it's gonna be so wonderful. Then on June 18th, we leave and go to Ravenna, which is across the boot of Italy. We really don't know that much about it, but we're just gonna fucking bull and see what's up, I guess. It used to be the capital of the Roman Empire, allegedly. Then on June 21st, we take a bus to our next destination, which is Ljubljana. It's the only bus that we take the whole time, but it is very convenient because it's straight from Ravenna to Ljubljana, which I will give you $5 if you know where either of those places are on a map. It's about an 8-hour bus ride. Then we stay in Ljubljana for 2 nights. From Ljubljana, we take an overnight train to Split, Croatia, which is our next destination. We arrive on June 24th. June 24th to July 1st, we're gonna be in Croatia on a boat with 8-ish other people. It's the Med Sailors cruise if you're interested in doing the same thing. They have a bunch of different boats that you can charter. They match you up with other guests that are similar. I think it's like 18 to 35 age range. You kind of cruise around with a whole fleet of boats and go on tours during the day and go out at night and swim in the ocean, and I don't even know. It's gonna be great. So we get back to land on July 1st. We stay the night in Croatia, and then on July 2nd, we make it to our next destination. We take an overnight train from Split, Croatia into Austria, and then back down into Italy, where we arrive in Bologna at like 6 a.m. Once we get to Bologna, we take a quick train to Nice that morning, and Nice is our next stop. So we stay in Nice from July 2nd to the 5th. I got a nice little hotel from some credit card bonus points. I would highly recommend, if you're planning on taking a trip and you could afford to get a credit card, get those bonus sign-up points, because that will get you a couple nights in a nice place. And on July 5th, we make it to our next place, which is Madrid. We take a train from Nice. We go through to Barcelona, and then we take a train from Barcelona to Madrid. We arrive that evening. Then the next day, July 6th through the 8th, is the Mad Cool Festival, which is where we'll be seeing a whole bunch of cool people, including the 1975, of course, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Lizzo, Lil Nas, a whole bunch of people. So it's gonna be great. July 9th, we take a train from Madrid and go back to Barcelona for a few days. We fly out on the 14th very early from Barcelona all the way to Prague. So we get into Prague on the 14th. We stay in Prague for a few days, I don't know how long. We're staying at a one fam hostel, so that'll be fun. I really like that brand of hostel, so I know it's gonna be good. After we stay in Prague, we're taking a short train ride to Vienna. We're not sure where we're staying yet, but heard lots of great things about Vienna. And then we take a very short train ride, about like an hour, to Bratislava, Slovakia. I've been there before, love that place. We're going back to the same brand of hostel, and I'm sure it's gonna be great. We stay there until July 24th, and then we take a train to Brno, which is a smaller town near Prague in Czechia. Fly out from Brno to London. We stay in London for one day, and then we fly from London back to America. And that is the itinerary. Let me know if you have questions. I will be filming and documenting this whole trip, kind of as a little keepsake for me, and in case anybody's interested, it will also be available on this channel, on the World Wide Web, for anybody to see, so feel free to follow along. The last step is deciding what you want to bring. So now I think I'm gonna go through what I packed so that you can kind of see everything that I'm bringing on my back and my chest, and I'll have everything I need for 6 weeks. So let's get right into that.